This is reflections on politics and society, time after my cartoon crisis, and the way I look at society and politics today. And it's in many ways a kind of paradox. I look at it. I look at it through the lens of a paradox that's very difficult to live with. One of them is that one side of the paradox is that we the people, are basically entitled to govern ourselves and to have self-rule in small entities, and that we can keep our leaders in check and under control, and we can we'll pull them down whenever we feel threatened by their power, and that we actually can choose them and choose not to have them, and that's the ideal form of having politics and society, that every entity is entitled to lead and govern itself, and there is someone we agree on and choose that can distribute and manage this self-governing entities, but that we can have the power over them, and they don't run away from us using politics as a means of gathering power and influence, so that we cannot oppose them anymore, and that we have to deal with them in an aggressive or in a bad manner, or be suppressed by them, and thereby lose the idea. And the other side of this paradox is that because we during history realized that this has not been the case, it's not been a reality that we can govern ourselves without it goes wrong, or somebody takes over the power and shift it towards his or her own goals. That's why we mostly agree on tribalism, or agree on kingdomship, and agree on giving up power to some leaders, as long as they can give us what we basically need, and as long as they are from our group, or people we can put our trust in, and then we accept the situation as it is, and maybe it goes out of hand, we'll try to put it back if we can, or it falls down. And so, because we cannot live this ideal, most of the time we just choose to give or hand over power more than we actually wanted to, and that's because we need society to be running. And that's why we had for thousands of years tribal leaders, and we had war leaders, and we had kings, and we had emperors, we had dynasties of families ruling people, because that's the realistic way of getting about. Because anarchy is no option. Anarchy is the worst thing we can get to, because that's the illusion of freedom, because we think we can govern ourselves ideally, like Ethiopia with Thomas More, and then we go towards anarchism, and anarchism cannot hold, because someone will take over sooner or later, because it's just not realistic at all, and it's not a way. So we don't want anarchism, but we don't want dictatorship and tyranny in the other hand. But all in between that, people can be very tolerant to different ways of ruling. So what about democracy as a way of life? How do I feel and think about that? I think I've been living in a democracy all my life. And even in the country I was born, it was a republic that was meant to be a place with a parliament and votes, and different religions side by side governing the country together. So democracy is a beautiful way that we find among many other ways, as Churchill has said in his speeches famously, that democracy, he doesn't see democracy as the best way of ruling, but it's definitely the least of many other the least evil of many other alternatives. So this clever Churchill, he can see through the holes of democracy and know that it's not perfect, and that there are layers of power and corruption, and people getting away with defining politics and society without getting back to the people, or just getting their votes and getting on with what they like. And if criticism comes, then they can pull over and do some stunts, and it has a lot of holes in it that's becoming more and more clear, and we see more and more voices that really can say what I'm saying today. There have been books and writings about the failure of many democracies, and how they are failing in the West and failing their own people, and that's why people start turning to tribalism, or to ideologies that they didn't want or turned away from in the beginning. So democracy, as good as it is, it's also been a way um, of, um, of handling people in a manipulative way, and we see that in many countries around the world, that in paper and in the title are called the democracy of this and that in many places in the world, but if you go to the reality, you see it's a tribal leader, or it's a general, or it's someone who are just a dictatorship just beneath the surface. So what democracy is all about is not the name, but it's about the values that's behind it, and that needs a lot of education and competence in following the society rule, and being able to have so much power within the people, so we can topple the governments or make so much crisis that they can be changed, and we get a new type of leaders. And it needs a lot of dynamics. People from the outside should be able to get inside and maybe show some leadership abilities. And today it's more like oligarchies, and it's more like dynasties, where it goes in one kind of parties that keeps ruling for many what can you say, decades, or it's kids of the same rich people who came to the top and stayed at the top, who can continue ruling. So is democracy, it's in its practical ways, really the way that gives us that security that we want, that we don't get cheated, or we don't get tyrannical power leading us and suppressing us. We have also always to understand that the kind of leadership we get is the reflection of who we are and who the people really are. Because if you go into that society that's been cheated by corruption and by tyrannical leaders suppressing others, if you go into the society and analyze the groups under their rule, you will see many of them in the same position will do the same thing, and they are doing it and practicing it in their small communities. They are excommunicating or isolating, or pushing other people out because they don't agree with them, or doing all that stuff that we see on a political national level. And so it's many times a reflection of who we are and what we think, and the way we treat each other, that we get these leaders. So yes, democracy seems to be the way that's with the least evil, but at the same time, it's not about democracy, it's about the values behind it. So I think kingdomship is one of the great alternatives, because we've tried that for thousands of years. And we know that kings have been both tyrannically and being weak and corrupt. But it gives a certain stability to people, and people can openly accept that this is a chosen family that is ruling the world. But looking into history, we can see that this has had its trouble as well. 1,000 years and 100 years of war and trouble between dynasties and between dynasties and areas and barons and all that kind of stuff we know from especially European history, but also from the East. So what about having an emperor or having a big like Roman-like leadership? And the Romans had actually a shift between two type of society. They had this open voting society, representative, and they had this tyrannical one-man rule that actually chose the laws and could put aside what he or she what he didn't like, and we see that getting back to us over and over in the world. So what I see is it's not about what what it's called, but it's what's behind it. And I think that's the deeper truth in politics and in the way of ruling. And I think there are 5 parameters that everyone should look to, whatever they have, whether it's a general or a kingdom or a tribe that's leading, or a chief, or a republic, or a basic democracy, whatever they have, they should look at these 5 parameters: how they treat their minorities, and how they distribute wealth, and how they secure safety and freedom for everyone, and how they make society prosper, and how they go about criticism to their rule, and how they like include people in education and criticism in order to develop society. So many times when we look on how minority are treated, we can see that it's a big issue for many countries and many places, because minorities, they can grow, and if they grow strong, they can be an opposing force, and maybe they want to take over or change the society into another direction, culturally or politically. And that's why many societies with corrupt leadership or that kind of misuse of power, they start like pushing minorities back or down. That happens also in the West. It's not because this is a place of angels at all. People can be enticed to say we have to keep that minority at check, because if they grow, they will be a danger to our society and rule. But the ideal should say let them grow, and if they have an argument, that's the idealistic idea of democracy. If they have an argument, they should be entitled to say it, and if people agree with that argument, they are also entitled to change their mind. So if a minority grows within a majority and they can argument for their case and why society should change in a certain way or certain patterns, and people can listen to that and see the reason behind it, that means that it's an eligible argument. And that's an argument, I guess, what is he called, the sociologist from Germany I've read about, that has put that forward in cultural voices of politics, Habermas, Jürgen Habermas, and was supported by several other views among other leading figures. But Jürgen Habermas had put that idea forward of the cultural communication within a society. The second one is how they govern wealth, and that's to make sure that the rich doesn't have too much and the poor doesn't lack too much. And that's not a way of communism I'm talking about. Communism was a big failure and a big corrupt illusion, because nobody is equal and nobody wants to be equal. Everybody accepts actually differences, and that some people have more and others have less, and that's the way of life. But what we don't accept is that some people have too much when others has too little, and that's the role of the state and whoever is governing in a democracy or in a kingdomship or in a fashion of an emperor or republic or whatever it is, to make sure that the distribution of wealth can really benefit most people in society and get the economy running back on track. And to fight corruption in that manner is very, very important, because corruption is what's eating up our societies over time. And it's very strange how much we get blind to that every time we get repeated in the same story. Every society gets to the top, thinks they are invincible, and they forget to look into these corruptions and the distribution of wealth in a very bad manner that makes people at the end doesn't care for that society, don't want to defend it and don't want to be part of it, and they start turning against it, whether it is from within or without, or helping and aiding a foreign power to take over, because they see, I cannot benefit from this society anymore. I'm part of it, my ancestors are part of it, but there are small gangs or groups or small people, and the corruption is actually well known, but a taboo, or we cannot talk about it. This is just a family business, or this is just a party business, and that's something to be kept an eye with. The third parameter is to keep the society safe and free, and that needs a great justice system. The justice system who is truly blind to differences. And how many movies haven't we seen from USA? I remember the one with Al Pacino where he goes crazy in the end, and Justice for All, where he realizes that justice is impossible and that reality is actually far beyond what we think the justice system is and is doing. The corruption is very deep, and the key to that is fixing the psyches and fixing the spiritual ways of people. The Enlightenment was part of that people live in a way that is just and in balance to themselves, their families, their obligations, that owed to help them keep the society going in a very in a more enlightened way. And it's when we fall into stupidity and we fall into greed and into egoism and carelessness and ignorance that it starts going more and more wrong, even on higher levels, especially on higher levels. And corruption becomes an issue among judges and among lawyers and among people who are getting to be sentenced. And how many times haven't we felt like if a poor man steals or do something wrong, the punishment is there immediately, and the police steps at his door. While when you find rich people doing the same thing, it's much harder to get to them because they are more protected, even maybe by other officers. And we are in a time now where we can feel very deeply that the West is in big trouble in this, but also the East. You see, even the people who need to uphold justice are so deeply infected by the corruption. We see that in many of the books that comes out, in the movies, and in reflections in the newspapers and articles in some of the bold journalists who want to talk about that justice cannot be done towards this firm or towards that boss because he's well protected by his money or group or lawyers who are corrupt and who are able to threaten people away from following up on justice. And who is able to give himself up to justice and say, I've done wrong? If we can get there, we are in great societies. That's the Ethiopia of Thomas More. But we are not there at all, and that's why we are dealing with a reality that's really sunken in deep trouble in a very realistic way. But at the same time, there are forces that always look into these things and try to talk about them. So keeping the society just, safe, and with place for freedoms both of expression, of living, of feeling safety, starting new businesses, traveling, and all that. At the same time, keeping it safe and secure. That's a big balance today for many societies. How to maintain the balance between freedom and security. And I think we've swallowed a lot of security ideas today because the control has become very, very big many places on Earth, and that's a killer for people's creativity and the feeling of motivation in many places. And the fourth thing is that prosperity should be brought to the country. That's the ruler's obligation, whatever kind of rule that is, to bring prosperity not to the small circle, but to the whole country. And the people will feel that. And once they feel that, they will back up and they will help and they will be more and more part of that society, and they will love it even more and they will be loyal to it. But with time, when people feel, well, yeah, we are brought prosperity, but we cannot see it and feel it. There are some people who are feeling it, living in the skies, and they're using all their means to keep the people from protesting against it. Why not use the power to let people more in and spread it out and get more safety that way than using a lot of money to keep people at bay? We know that movie of Elizon where there are some people who found their way up to a special closed society above Earth, and this guy comes up there by mistake. I guess it was Matt Damon, and he finds out how these people are living and doesn't caring about those on Earth, and they're doing everything they can to keep them out and keep them down. And why not turn it around? Why not open the whole world with all these valuables and all this power these people have to make Earth the same paradise instead of escaping it? So it's a crazy way of thinking, but that's the blindness of the ignorance that many people falls in. So our problems of prosperity is the problems of ignorance and greed, and it's a kind of psychology that's gone totally wrong because nobody teaches it and nobody is talking about it. So we can, somebody are talking about it, but not in mainstream media and mainstream ways. And today, journalists who want to tell the truth, they can be in big danger, even in their own country, who puts up the flags of freedom. And your voice won't get out if it's not aligned with some special interests, and that's not good. Your voice should get out if it's saying something that's of interest to the country, and that's something that's helping building a healthy society, whatever you are saying, and that will make people more calm, knowing that the right voices and the clever voices will get through and get out. And I hear several experts online saying today there are only space for the one idea, and that's the fifth point I had on my list. The 5 parameters is that the government, whatever they are governing, which kind of society, they should give space for people to be able to criticize and to use that criticism in a positive and constructive manner to build up the society and to build up new ideas and perspective, and never fall into that pit of only looking one-sided. And the history is filled with stories we can get back to, also from the near history of the Cold War, where we can see the one-sided view and how it sometimes could have pushed us over the edge in atomic wars or in great crisis. And according to some of these experts that I respect and sometimes listen to online, and they can sometimes express these thoughts that we are not listened to anymore. We are listened to in Asia or in Africa or in other places, but in our own Western societies there are no space for another view on certain issues and conflicts than the ones that's ruling, and that's the one that's leading. There should always be an opposer on any board and any team, and that should be a man that's always like the one who should stand behind Caesar and carrying his lauerbeer, just to give a symbolic idea from Shakespeare, and to tell him and whisper in his ear, you are not God, you are merely human, remember that. And there should be persons like that on every staff in every country, and they should be immune. They should be given a diplomatic immunity from their own leaders and their own country to say whatever is necessary to their leaders with a good heart. And they should be chosen by the leaders to oppose them at every road they see it fit, and not just clap them at the back and say yes. And people get intolerant towards these different views, because that's the way societies kill themselves and rotten down slowly, of course, but it's an inevitable process that happens. So in my opinion on politics and the society today, I saw part of these 5 values in the history in the Islamic society in the early caliphate, where Abu Bakr, the friend of the Prophet Muhammad, had said to people when he got chosen, he said, I am merely a person of you, and if you find me doing any mistakes, come forward and say it, and you are totally safe in doing so. And he urged people to do that, and the same did the people after him. We had Omar saying to his son, you are not going to hold a public office, because it's enough that one of this family has got this burden, and I don't want any of you others to be asked for or put under claim later on any of these issues. And so we have these ideals being practiced for some times, and then they go wrong with people taking power or using their family or doing stuff that's not according to these ideals. And we see it in the Western world with several emperors as well who put things right. People talk about Marcus Aurelius and talk about Cicero as people who were like political, but in the same way stoic and wanting the good for the greatest possible number of people. We have seen it in kings through history that have been able to lift themselves up. We know the famous story of Henry VI in Shakespeare, but many talk about different others, Charles III, I guess, and William the Just, or something like that. There have been many kings and many people whom history mentions say he was a just and good king who brought safety and goodness to his people and ruled for 20 or 30 years, but then it went wrong because his son took over and he was of a different kind of type, and he started doing this and that, and things went wrong. And sometimes it keeps going on for 50, 60, or 70 years, depending on how people are ruled. So yeah, we shouldn't just fight for democracy just because we are part of it. We shouldn't just fight for a monarchy because we like it. But I like monarchy personally because I think it gives safety and stability. And I like it in Scandinavia because it has been especially in Denmark, 1,000-year history where it gives the people a certain perspective and depth, and it makes it all feel more safe and more cool to be part of. And so we have to look, and some people support the caliphate or support an emperor or a new type of generalismo or one-man rule because they say that's the safest thing. He can call himself a Democrat all he wants, but he is the one who is in charge, and that's how life is, and we accept that because it gives us safety and prosperity. And as long as he respects the minorities, in my opinion, and he disturb wealth in a good way. We had it with the Habsburg Empire, the Karl the Great and Karl II, who did that. Good distribution of wealth and a just system, as just as it can be, fighting corruption all the time, and fourth, bringing prosperity to everyone and to the country as a whole, and fifth, accepting criticism and using it as a powerful way of refreshing people. So today that's what I see, and that's basically philosophy, and that's not a way of living. And people will say, well, that's not reality. What can we do? How can this be put into any kind of practical frame? Well, I don't really know. But I urge that everyone look into his society instead of just trying to oppose the other kind of society or oppose the dictatorship of this and that. I must say, though, that people who get the power by force, by suppressing people, will have a tendency to keep suppressing others. But it's all about enlightenment, actually, because we have also seen some leaders take over power by force, but with enlightenment thoughts and with these ideas, they brought actually peace and prosperity for the countries for 20 and 30 years. I'm not going to mention countries, but everyone who follow modern history knows several places like that. And we have seen democracies where people are voted in with a big smile and a cheer and a clap, and they've brought society more down and more inflation and more trouble than they wanted. And maybe they had cases of corruption that we heard of or never heard of. And so it's not easy just to say, well, I'm a Democrat, I support democracy. And I told that in my book from the 2018, but in a short way. There wasn't much space to talk about it because the book was becoming too big. I was talking about the courage to doubt, and I had another focus there. But basically I said, where are democracies headed? And what's happening with the old kind of rules? Basically, as a Dane in Denmark and as a part of an old Nepalese republic, I would like to see the republic go on in Lebanon in a more idealistic fashion. I would like to see the king have the same base and good securing role as we have in Denmark, even though he's not the political leader. But that people knows that if anything goes wrong, we have this power within us that we can invest in again. And I think people will raise their voices more and more if the world goes out in crisis. And I will finally say that I think the world is headed in one of two directions. We are either gonna see a global power take over, what they call a multinational, a multi-corporate power that's not chosen by states, and where the states who are deeply in debt will just become small enclaves for these big companies and powers that's behind the states, and that keeps them running actually, and make these circus clowns talk to people and get their votes. So this backdoor channels, deep states and all that can continue running, and the big corporates. So maybe we are going to shift into a new situation where these become more obvious and that people actually know they are being run by economy, by money, by people with power and influence, and not by people who can who can talk well or communicate their message using millions of dollars for PR reclams and for buying votes. And that could be more fair, but we could maybe be seeing such a change where the power will be shifted more obviously in the hands of multinational, multi-global actors who will cooperate together cross countries and cross borders. The other way we could go, and history shows we most of the time go that way, is that we go back to the small tribal nationalism or closed borders or wars that brings everyone out in a very destroyed fashion. We have to start over, and in those times we need the kings, we need the kingship, because they will give people the voice of security and trust. And we need people like Churchill, again, in the West at least. This is one of the figures I really admire, even though he had mistakes and had views I'm not concurring to, but he was one of the great figures that made this effort despite the times he was in. So we're gonna need reconciliation and in the voices. How long democracy is gonna hold truly in reality, I don't know, because it's not showing the strengths it should. We all know it has like big troubles, and there are corruption and it's not fair, and there are injustices and minorities. Things are not working as they were in the old days, both in small and big countries, and the economy is not distributed well, and we have tendencies that show that it's going to get into big troubles, and maybe suddenly they will shift back to something else or to something new. That's not far ahead that we're going to see a shift, and maybe they will revitalize, but it seems far out of reach with the level of education sinking, especially in the West, that needs the education to keep the democracies running. People are shallow and not knowing anything and just following one or two stream. We don't have the capacity. I'm not saying people are not able or capable. We don't have the capacity. The 24 hours a day doesn't make it run. Today it's so complex. We cannot follow. And the media, I have to say, they've turned from being the watchdog. That was the idea, that we have a democracy with the three separate powers, separated, the legal power from the executive power, from the parliamental power that makes the laws. And we have the media as the watchdog over them, so they don't become tyrannical or corrupt. And the media has unfortunately turned into a furnace wolf, to use a Norse mythology idea. Even politicians and people in states and in big positions are afraid of them, and how they can distort pictures, and how they can promote or did promote people's visions and ideas. And if they are deeply corrupt or they are deeply unethical, we are lost. We are totally lost. And there is no way otherwise to know anything if the media isn't strong and brave and well protected, as the fifth column I mentioned, protect the criticism and protect the ideas that's opposing the rulers at all time. And that's the media's role, and what happened to that, and how are they executing their powers. That will be a game changer, and it is already a game changer. And at one point, we will get a big hero who will come out and maybe reform the media or change it, or maybe like in a way just expose it. So we understand deeply. It's already half exposed. Where else would I get these thoughts of the media not functioning? But it should be either transformed or exposed, and at that point we will get a shift in gears. So yes, I support our democracy and our monarchy in Denmark, and I support any rule in the world that will stick to these five values, and of course carry the human rights and the basic global values of interaction between humans and avoiding wars. But that's a long way, and that's an idealistic way. A very much more realistic way is the cynical one that we are living in, more Machiavellian way that's taking over even in our private lives. And I can only see a big kind of destruction at the end of that road. And I know I'm sounding like a Cassandra from the Greek mythology, who's speaking the truth and trying to raise the voice of reason in a time where people just can't see beyond these curtains. But I believe deeply that values are what they make us grow or falter. And if our values are Machiavellian in politics, even in private life and social life, and people today are following the egoistic ways and the ways of the wolf who can get the power is the strong and clever one, and the fox who can fox everybody else is the one we should clap to. Well, good luck getting over that, and good luck getting societies to work. They won't work, because beyond the fox is another fox, and we are in a jungle, a never-ending bloodbath and battle and stress and killing. And congratulations, we will get the EI and the robots taking over, because at least they will have learned that they will have to follow the three strict rules of ethics: protect the humans, and save them, and protect yourself from danger. And we're back to level one, maybe, or a fight on a very different dimension. And yeah, we are in times that are truly shifting, also with the scientific knowledge and the power we have to get into space and get out of the limits of the earth, or maybe transform it and go into the seas and make new places. But I think we have all the resources to make earth a global fine place, and the people who have these abilities have the responsibilities, but we are lacking the values, and we are lacking the visions that we share, all of us, to walk that way without disruption. Thank you very much.